In my previous video, I was discussing letters or reading a lot about different writings from Christian leaders in the mid 4th century. This video will now transition to try to show more images, but I also have mostly narrative. But I do want to not read letters and instead guide you through a little tour. But before I do, I want to mention who I'm talking about. So I'll be discussing the 46th Bishop of Jerusalem, Martyrius, and then I'll skip over the 47th Sallustios, and then I'll end with the 48th bishop, Elias I. So that'll be a range from about 478 to 516, or about 40 years. And a little quick overview about who these people are. So uh, Martyrius, the third patriarch of Jerusalem, he was born maybe around the year 430. Uh, he's from Cappadocia, or South Turkey, or Central Turkey. He was educated in the Judean desert at a monastery called Lavra St Euthymyius, and this monastery stands in ruins today. It can still be visited. It's near West Bank. He became priest at Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then the last one, the Bishop Elias, or the fifth patriarch of Jerusalem, he was born maybe around the year 438. He was Arabian, or he's Arab born, and he was educated in Egypt at a monastery, but was driven out by a Miaphysite bishop who was known as Timothy, or Timothy the Cat. He then moved to Palestine and founded a lavra in Jericho. So these two, I'm just making it known, they're familiar with monasteries. They were educated at monasteries, or for people who were leaders at monasteries, and then they eventually moved to Jerusalem. So for this one, Elias, the monastery that he founded in Jericho, that one's in ruins. And Anastasius of Jerusalem, he's the one who ordained him as priest. He's famous or known for refusing communion with Macedonius the first of Constantinople, who is also called the traitor, for rejecting the divinity of the Holy Spirit. So first I'll start here with Martyrius. Martyrius of Jerusalem, according to Orthodox Wiki, was the Patriarch of Jerusalem from the years 478 to 486. He is credited with founding the monastery of Martyrios along the road from Jericho to Jerusalem and Palestine. Martyrios was born in Cappadocia during the first half of the 5th century. In 457, he joined the monastery of Euthymyius, which was east of Jerusalem, looking for an ascetic and hermetic life. Martyrius left the crowded monastery and established himself in a cave nearby. After entering the holy orders, Martyrius served as priest of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. He became Patriarch of Jerusalem in the year 478 and served until 486. It was probably during his term as Patriarch that Martyrius built the monastery of Martyrius in the Judean hills east of Jerusalem. He reposed on April 13 in the year 486 and was preceded by Anastasius and succeeded by Sallustius. Next, I'll show another form or chart of the list of patriarchs. You can see that Martyrius is listed right here. This one's from Wikipedia. So now the monastery of Martyrios. I'll give a quick, just brief over the Wikipedia version, then I'll take you to two other sites. So here you can see the monastery, stones, common features of the structure or type of building for the lavras. In the Judean desert, it was active between the second half of the 5th and the mid 7th century. So for about 200 years, there were a lot of monks living here. And the reason that they stopped living there is because of the Muslim invasions. Not to say that Arabs were unfriendly, for sure. There were Arabian tribes or special families among the Arabian tribes that were specifically Christian for many generations, even since the 1st century. But among them, not all of them were in alignment or in agreement with the consuls. And so those, I would say, are what's called, eventually, like in the 7th century, Muslims. Although at this time, like in the 5th century, they didn't exist. Muhammad hadn't been born or done anything at this time. So it was mostly Persians or other powers or state rulers that were in conflict and here in the Middle East. Martyrius, I want to point out the symbol. You'll see a lot of decorations or mosaics or types of illustrations in churches and monasteries. This one looks kind of Celtic. It's got what looks like braids, and then you can almost see a shamrock or a three clover looking circle. But interesting side story, you can read more about circles or about spheres or orbs under my other video for John II, where another person translated one of the Armenian uh, lectionaries for one of his homilies, and you can see him talking more about the spheres and how the church understood circles in the third and fourth and fifth centuries. It's all connected to the mystical aspect of the church. Um, but here on this Wikipedia page, it just gives some basic information about like the Persian invasion, and then following after by the Muslim conquest in the year 634 or something like that. Um, and then today there are still gravestones or vessels or pieces of marble or some kind of specifically designed item from the monastery that can be found. And I'll walk you through that on the other website. This is just more of a quick overview before we get into the details. So you'll see things like layout, um, what's called like the church or the nave with the apse, and then other features of architecture. Caves, burial grounds, refectory, kitchen, hostel for pilgrims, water supply, dimensions. It was interesting to me to see that the Jewish Virtual Library also had some information on the archaeology in Israel for the Monastery of Martyrius. The content looks similar to what's on the Wikipedia page. It lists dimensions, what kind of items were found, um, and gives a range or a timeline. Um, but before getting here into this one is called BibleWalks.com, Martyrius Monastery. Before I get into that, I want to share a different context so that you know what's going on during this time period. So, context overview. The Council of Chalcedon in the year 451 raised the status of the Bishop of Jerusalem to the rank of Patriarch, making him expanding the three previously existing thrones of Rome, Alexandria, Antioch from three to five. So basically including Constantinople and Jerusalem. So what this means in the time of Martyrius is that it was fairly new or recent, like within a 20-year period or 30-year period, that the jurisdiction granted the consul of the Palestinian provinces jurisdiction away from Antioch and into Jerusalem. And what that means is that it's a larger territory to manage, to supervise as a bishop or to oversee. That's the purpose of a patriarch. It's a ministerial government among the churches and the monasteries. So this basically means autocephaly or independence, meaning there is no direct supervision from Antioch um, or Rome or Alexandria, but it stands alone by itself. Um, so it means it has many other cities or villages that report to it. So now Jerusalem is in charge of other bishops um, in these specific districts or areas of Palestine and Jordan um, and Arabia. So the significance is that the promotion was largely due to the increased popularity of the pilgrimages to the Holy Land. In previous videos, I show websites for uh, other sources or other websites that can take you to these places, especially on my Atlas Bible. Under books or eras or continents, I have more like sites, more specific addresses where you can visit, um, and the importance of the site as a reference to Jerusalem as the mother of all churches, um, and the influence of the Byzantine emperor to recognize the city's special status. So the Pentarchy, while recognized in 451, the official term patriarch for the heads of the five major sees or thrones was solidified later in the year 531 by the Emperor Justinian I. But the point that I'm making is that the context that Martyrius is inheriting, that is still fairly new, is that he is now patriarch. He's the third patriarch. And so, what are some problems that exist during this time? So, Arianism, which was officially condemned in the First Ecumenical Council in the year 325, still exists. And it would continue to exist until the 7th century. So, I'll just read a quick summary for this. This ideology, started by the Egyptian priest Arius, taught that, or not started by him, but like made public and available in multiple places through his efforts and other monks or priests like him. So didn't necessarily uh, get contained in Africa. It was also spread in Europe and in Asia. But the name Arianism comes from him, from Arius. He was the foremost representative and the one specifically condemned at the council, but all other bishops or priests who followed his ideas were also condemned as heretical or as erroneous in their teachings. And what this teaching is that Jesus was a created or a creature being rather than a co-eternal or existing at the same time with God, largely faded as a major organized force in the West by the late 6th century, so about 150 years after Martyrius, specifically following the Visigoths' conversion in the year 589, while effectively banned in the Roman Empire by the year 381 under the rule of the Emperor Theodosius. It persisted among Germanic tribes in the north of Europe until the 7th century. What this means is that even though it started in Africa, it persisted in Europe. But I'm connecting this to Martyrius because in Asia, specifically in Arabia and parts of Persia, some of the Arian bishops that were deposed in Turkey or in the Council of Nicaea were exiled or were sent away. And when they were sent away, they went to either North Europe to the Germans, or they went to Asia to the Arabs. So in the future, someone like Muhammad would get his teachings of Jesus from this kind of representation. So that's why, as an example, like Muslims don't believe that Jesus is God; they believe that Jesus is a creature. So they got that idea from somewhere, and that somewhere is one of the three or so examples is Arianism. Another one is Manichaeism and some other Christian heresies or heretical groups that were somehow associated with Christianity, but were not part of the church, or they had the option to join the church, but they declined. And those options are what the councils are. That's why the councils are so important in the church, because it's an effort to maintain unity in the faith rather than promote schisms or promote separation from the faith. So, key stages in the decline of Arianism: in the year 381, the Council of Constantinople, Emperor Theodosius I formally condemned Arianism, ending its dominance within the Byzantine Empire, or what was called at the time the Eastern Roman Empire. And from the 4th and 6th centuries, Arianism continued to thrive among Germanic tribes like the Goths, the Vandals, and the Burgundians. So basically, like Spain, France, Northwest Africa, and parts of Italy, converted by the missionary Euthymyius. In the year 589, Third Council of Toledo, in Spain, the Visigothic kingdom, the last major Arian power or representation of this heresy, officially embraced the Nicene version of Christianity, marking the functional end of Arianism as a political force. In the 7th century, organized Arianism disappeared due to conquest and conversion. In other words, you either became a Nicene Christian or you became a Muslim. While it never again held institutional power, certain unrelated theological ideas similar to Arianism re-emerged centuries later through modern sects like Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, these are not direct descendants of this movement, but they represent similar ideas. Um, so again, just putting attention to Martyrius for the first part of the video, and then I'll move to Elias the first. Next, we'll look at the BibleBox.com. So this Martyrius Monastery. Things that you'll see here are the background, location history, the floor plan, and photos. And then at the bottom, there's a YouTube video that I'll put on the description. So this monastery is located in Ma'ale Adumim. It's about 7.5 miles east of Jerusalem. The monastery is named after St Martyrius, who was an early Christian monk and hermit. The Martyrius Monastery was built during the Byzantine period around the 5th century near the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. It is believed that the monastery was built on the site where St. Martyrius lived as a hermit after he became the Patriarch of Jerusalem between the years 478 and 486. He turned the monastery to become the largest walled monastery in this region, covering an area of 10,000 square meters. The monastery was originally dedicated to St. George, the dragon slayer, but it was later rededicated to St. Martyrius. The Martyrius Monastery is well preserved and contains a church, chapels, refectory, that means dining hall, or a place where monks and visitors can have a communal meal or eat together, and kitchen, stable rooms for monks, and hostel for visiting pilgrims. The church is one of the largest and most impressive buildings at the site. It features a large central nave with two side aisles and is decorated with a number of frescoes and mosaics. The monastery was an important center of pilgrimage during the Byzantine period between the 5th and 7th centuries, and it continued to be an important religious site during the early Islamic period. Location and aerial map. The site is located on a high hill in the middle of the city. The monastery is located 2 kilometers southeast of the ancient road from Jerusalem to Jericho. So let's see here. You can see here is the Jerusalem-Jericho road, right there where the mass is pointing. And then down here in the middle of the hill, or somewhere near the hill, is the church, next to the monk's room, next to the bathhouse, next to the refectory, next to the burial caves, next to the stables, and there's the city of Ma'ale Adumim. And then we'll keep going. History of the place. The life of Martyrius was documented by the biographer Euthymyius, Cyril of Scythopolis, who lived in the nearby Euthymyius Monastery. So basically, a monk or a person, a Christian from another monastery, wrote about this monastery. His testimony, The Life of Euthymius or Kyrillos von Scythopolis, provides a valuable source of information. Martyrius was born in Cappadocia, eastern Turkey. He spent some years as a hermit in the large monastic center of Nitria in Egypt, which was then the center of monasticism for Christianity. He arrived in the Judean desert in the year 457, together with a friend Elias, an ex-Arab monk who also was a prominent hermit. He founded monasteries and became the Patriarch of Jerusalem in 494 to 518. So basically, the fifth patriarch and the third patriarch were friends before they were patriarchs. Both monks were expelled by the Patriarch of Alexandria, meaning they were kicked out from Egypt due to their pro-Chalcedonian view, meaning they affirmed the Council of Chalcedon, meaning that they sided with the resolutions of the Fourth Ecumenical Council held in Turkey in the year 451, where Christian leaders condemned Monophysitism. Monophysitism is where they believe that there's a fusion or a single nature of Jesus Christ, as opposed to a hypostatic union, which is two natures existing simultaneously without confusion or without merging. Martyrius and Elias first lived in the cells of the Lavra or Laura of Euthymyus. Euthymyus the Great was one of the prominent fathers of the Judean desert and a pro-Chalcedonian himself. Feeling that the Laura is too crowded and the cells were narrow and uncomfortable, he moved to seclude in a cave 3 kilometers west of the Laura on the location of the present monastery. Later, he established a smaller monastery there with a small church around his cave. Martyrius then served as a priest in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. In 478, he was appointed to the distinguished position of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, a title he held until his death in 486. This position was earned due to his fame and his consistent support of the community monk system, or the Cenobium. He used his power in this position to build a grand monastery by the year 482, 4 years before his repose, which became a major center of monasticism in the Judean desert. In other words, both Egypt and Palestine were famous for their monasteries, so that pilgrims could visit and be educated and trained in their Christian faith. After Martyrius, the monastery hosted dozens of monks and was one of the great centers of the Judean desert monasticism at this time. Due to its popularity, the monastery was renovated by Abbot Genesius. Abbot means father, but it's also specifically a leader of monks sometimes at a specific single monastery and sometimes over a group of monasteries. Genesius, at the end of the 6th century, he repaved the mosaic floors of the church, constructed the grand refectory, dining hall, and constructed the structures of the inn. And here's an example of a monk or a single individual who lives in a cave. These are called hermits, drawn by Rena. After the Byzantine period, at the end of the Byzantine period, the monastery suffered a series of blows, starting with a severe earthquake, followed by the Persian invasion. So this is not Muslim. This is still before. I guess Islam started to exist between the years 610 and 632, but it still wasn't imperial or a grand caliphate. It was still minor, and the Persians had been at war with the Greeks or the Byzantines for many centuries. Part of the reason that the Persian Empire easily fell to the Muslim invaders was because They were already financially weakened and militarily weakened after like 400 years of war with the West. So it's very easy to capture a nation when they have no more money and no more soldiers. Um, and so this place finally abandoned during the early Arab occupation in the 7th century. I think that was the year 632, 634. Ottoman period. In 1874, okay, I'll skip this part. So we'll get to the map. So here, the point of, even though today we're in 2026, a lot of maps are based on piece of paper that someone found at a cave, at a monastery, or kept in a church. So this is just an example of like how people kept their roads marked and their names or distances marked. Um, and because of the Arab conquest, you change from having Greek language or Greek documents to Arabic language or Arabic documents. Um, so it looks like this is a map, sheet 17 of a survey of Western Palestine by Condor and Kitchener in the year 1872 and published in 1880. Um, in the modern period, the monastery was excavated in the 1980s under the direction of Isaac Magen of the Israeli Antiquities Authority. It was opened recently, but with limited visiting hours. Okay, here's getting more to the fun stuff. The plan. The monastery floor plan is almost square, and its 2.5 acres area was protected by 6 foot high walls. The main gate is located on its east wall. A hostel or inn is built on the northeast area outside the walled complex. So you can see this orange area is where visitors could stay. A color-coded plan of the monastery is shown below. The inn is located on the northeast side of the monastery. The main entrance to the complex is from the west gate. Uh, so it looks like you enter from this side, which opens to the main corridor, okay, leading to a central courtyard. Uh, and it opens to the gray area. Okay, so the gray area is where people could walk. Um, on the south side of the corridor is the church, yellow. A stable and pen are located to the north corner in purple. The refectory and kitchen are the northwest in green. A bathhouse on the west side, blue. On the south wing are the monks' rooms in pink. And the southeast chapel in gray. So let's zoom into this. You can see the scale is for 20 meters. So it looks like the church in yellow is about a little bit larger than 20 meters. Looks like the narthex is maybe 5 meters. The nave maybe 15 meters, and then the apse another 5 meters. So that means when you walk in from the west side, as is still traditional to this day. And then the main worship of the laity is in the middle, or the nave. And then the apse, where the priest and the clergy can have permission to enter, is where the mystery is accomplished. Always facing east, as is traditional, to recall the prophecy of the prophet that the Messiah would come from the east. And so people or Christians in expectation that every liturgy face east as they stand in prayer and worship to expect the King of Kings and the Lord of Glory. Photos, aerial views. Okay, so here's the same floor plan, but now with an aerial view. So you can see here is where the church would have been. So here's where my arrow is, the narthex. And it looks like here in the middle, about 15 meters, is the nave. And then here where the bush is on the east side is where the apse would have been with its foundations and its walls and ceiling. Um, the refectory looks like they built recently some kind of area, maybe for guests or visitors. In an hostel on the northeast side of the monastery are structures which served as a hostel. This area is 20 meters by 43 meters, marked as a red square on the plan. It contained guest rooms, stables, and a chapel. Cool thing about the Orthodox tradition, they still maintain monasteries. It's still a very popular thing to go and visit. There's a lot of spiritual nourishment with the prayers, the hymns, um, the lectionaries, and of course the divine liturgy. This one is the in-service, the visitors of the monastery, as well as pilgrims and travelers of the Jordan-Jerusalem road. So I'm connecting this again to the fifth patriarch of Jerusalem, Martyrius. So this is what he would have been taking care of. He would have spent his energy and effort to maintain. This is just one of probably the many monasteries that he would have overseen to educate people, to increase their faith, to show them the Holy Land and different places where Jesus Christ or the apostles or other Christian witnesses, evangelists, confessors, martyrs would have accomplished a great deed in the kingdom of God. Um, Looks like here we have an area constructed by the Abbot Genesius at the end of the 6th century. I'll skip over more of the readings just to focus on the visuals. I want to ask, like, if you were alive in this time during the 6th century, how would you have used your resources, your strength, your money, your time, um, to support Christianity? It seems like the monks spent their time for this, for uh, places where people could worship, for their construction and their maintenance. And so the role of the bishop is to oversee or manage these things so that people aren't spreading errors or teaching erroneous things. Um, Looks like here there's still some pieces of mosaic on the floor, mostly gone, but you can still see some of the patterns. Okay, a Greek inscription was found on the floor which names two abbots, Genesius and John. Abbot Genesius was the head of the monastery during the renovations at the end of the 6th century when the mosaic floor was repaved. You can see, I can't tell what kind of bird that is. But looks like you got different flowers, different birds, different creatures. The atrium of the church is located on the west side, also pays the same mosaic design. A stone bench is located on the western wall. Look at that. The geometry, the use of images in the church. I wonder what the walls and the ceiling would have looked like, because here it seems like only the floor is preserved in certain areas. A view of the north side of the courtyard is shown below. Dining hall and kitchen. Let's see, what did they have inside? Okay, so you see these sort of structures, more patterns. Okay, here's a quote that was found on one of the inscriptions. It says, during the time of our Holy Father, Genesius, priest and archimandrite, this work too was done for his salvation and for the salvation of his brothers in Christ. This work was completed in the month of March in the first year of the induction. Oh, here's the inscription on the floor. The next picture shows a detail of the two of the columns, the capitals, the mosaic floor, and the stone benches where the monks sat to eat. Section of the floor. You have to ask if you were visiting, what do all these symbols mean? And I'm sure the monks, or at least the abbot, would be able to explain what their purpose is and why a Christian would spend time looking at these things. And just for those who are unfamiliar, the purpose of a refectory, in general, Christians fast before going to church. So after communion, uh, when the Lord's body and blood is served and the unity of the faith is experienced in a mystical way, people, after the dismissal, go and eat together. In the New Testament, you hear this called an agape or a love feast. Um, so the breaking of bread wasn't only limited to the disc and the chalice, but it was also an actual meal after the liturgy that was given to people. Um, so this kitchen is part of the liturgy, basically, like it's part of the worship of God to eat together. Um, so that's probably where the monks spent energy, time, and effort to maintain the refectory. It's not merely a practical thing of like people are hungry, but it's a spiritual thing. In my experience, so far I visited three monasteries. When you're at the monastery, at least one monk will stand and be reading from the lives of the saints, be reading kind of how I read the July 2nd for Saint Juvenal, so that you don't spend time wasting in idleness or just talking about whatever, like the weather or sports or something like that, but specifically hearing noble things or spiritual things. So you eat basically in silence because there's a reader, and the reader is reading from the books, from the holy books that the monastery treasures or collects for the purpose of commemorating someone, and usually encouraging the faith to stand firm in the faith, to preserve the faith, to not deviate from the faith. It looks like these artifacts are kept at a nearby museum called the Good Samaritan. Looks like the excavations have been moved over there. So you see here some jars, a table made of marble, ceramics, the utensils used as basically as a continuation of the worship of God. Burial cave and tomb. Okay, on the north side of the monastery is a large burial cave which contains the tombs of several important leaders of the monastery. This was probably the hermitage cave used by Martyrius before the monastery was constructed. This area is marked red on the plan. So you see here the cave goes underground. This is the abbot's burial hall. Okay, so we got a tomb there. This was a tomb of Paul or Paulus, the abbot of the monastery, who headed the construction of the monastery during the period Martyrius served as Patriarch of Jerusalem at the end of the 5th century. Paul's tombstone is on display at the Museum of the Good Samaritan. So you see here the Greek inscriptions, what looks like 2 palm leaves, and then the cross. On the west side of the monastery is a bathhouse. This area is marked red. A view of the bathhouse and the rooms around it, as shown in the picture. A pool is located between the bathhouse and the residential area of the monks in the south. It is seen below on the left side. Oh, I think it's this one. Looks like a pleasant place to visit, especially in the summer. On the south side of the monastery are the rooms of the monks and a chapel. This area is marked as a red square on the plan. The chapel is located in the center on the residential quarter near the southwest corner. Its apse, oriented to the east, is shown below. Christians have always prayed east. This is called ad orientem. In the west, they stopped doing this, I think, in the 9th century or the 12th century. I forgot. Another view of the apse of the chapel. It's important to have special places to worship. One of the rooms located along the southern wall is shown in the next picture. Okay. More patterns at a different location. Mosaic floor with geometric patterns. I wonder how beauty is an instrument or a function to the worship of God. Water and sewage systems. Okay, so the monks weren't just like stupid people, but they were at least hiring or organizing experts or the right authorities to be clean or to move water and sanitary methods. Another covered channel is seen on the southeast side. Okay, control of water. Geometric pattern is carved into stone used to collect the water into the gutter channels. If I had been alive in the 5th century, I would have been asking questions about all these things about why did you make something a certain height, or why is something such a distance long or wide, or what are the specific functions of these different locations? How is time and space used to orient a person to the worship of the Holy Trinity? A water basin, a view of the stable and the pen behind it. The monk whose duty was to look after the animals had a stone bed with a raised headrest. Nice bed. Other animals were kept in the adjacent rooms. A trough and sewage outlet is seen on the sides. Here's a trough, and here's a sewage outlet. Another room for the animals. There weren't cars yet, so people had to move with camels or donkeys or some kind of animal vehicle. Okay, so I'll put this one in the view. This is a YouTube video of the aerial view walking you through But I wanted to read to you because I think some of you are on your mobile and don't really read from the screen. So I wanted to read it so you can have audio while you're on your way somewhere to be nourished in your faith. So as the next and final part of the video, I'll read from Elias of Jerusalem. This is from Orthodox Wiki. Uh, Elias of Jerusalem was bishop and patriarch of Jerusalem from 494 until he was deposed by Emperor Anastasius in the year 516 for supporting the decrees of the Fourth Ecumenical Council. He was the main opponent of the Monophysites. Remember that Elias was educated in Egypt, and he was exiled by the Miaphysite bishop. But here, as a Diophysite, as maintaining the council that affirmed the two natures of Christ that were not mixed. Um, and it looks like here he influenced the Synod of Tyre, or a council in Lebanon. He also founded many monasteries in his patriarchate. So both Martyrius and Elias, and in general bishops of Jerusalem, used their effort and energy to found monasteries, maintain monasteries in true Orthodox faith, um, and allow people to come and visit and walk around holy places. His life. An Arab by birth, Elias was educated in a monastery in Egypt. A defender of the Council of Chalcedon, Elias was driven from Egypt by the Monophysite Patriarch of Alexandria, Timothy II, in the year 457. Traveling to Palestine, Elias founded a Laura in Jericho, and soon was ordained a priest by Patriarch Anastasius of Jerusalem. This is not Anastasius the Emperor. You'll see often that there are many people with the same name. In 494, after the repose, that's why it's good to name the city where they have authority, or to name their title, or at least put some kind of adjective or marker to distinguish them. In 494, after the repose of Patriarch Sallustius, Elias succeeded him as the Patriarch of Jerusalem. As Patriarch, Elias acknowledged Euthymyius as the Patriarch of Constantinople, but refused to acknowledge his successor, Macedonius II. Elias became involved in the conflicts created by Emperor Anastasius' efforts to condemn the Council of Chalcedon. Basically, the state government was trying to force the schisms to be united. And so by military strength or by financial strength and by propaganda, trying to make everybody say that they believe the same thing, even though it was clear that they believed different things. The Diophysites, Monophysites, and Miaphysites are three different parties of Christianity. In this, he supported Patriarch Flavian II of Antioch. About the year 509, the Monophysite bishop of Hierapolis, which is in Turkey, Zanias, attempted to make Patriarch Elias of Jerusalem ascribe to the Monophysite formula. Formula meaning the creed or the expression of how Christ is described. Additionally, the emperor ordered Elias to convene a synod or a council to condemn the Council of Chalcedon. However, Elias, as an Orthodox bishop, rightly dividing the word of truth, refused and in turn sent to the emperor a profession of orthodoxy. This document was carried by followers of the Monophysite Dioscorus of Alexandria and was altered and wrought to contain an anathema or a curse against those who spoke of two natures in Christ. After Elias found out about the falsification of his document, he sent another unaltered copy. In the year 512, at a synod of Sidon, which is also in Lebanon, convened by the Monophysites, an attempt was made to condemn Chalcedon and to depose Elias and Flavian. However, largely through his efforts, Elias persuaded the fathers of the council to do neither. The enraged Monophysite party went on to accuse the two bishops of Nestorianism and got Emperor Anastasius to depose them. Flavian was deposed first. He was succeeded by Severus, with whom Elias would not have communion. Severus of Antioch is a venerated saint in the Church of the East, but he is not venerated as a saint anywhere else. Or he might be by some of the Orientals, but definitely not the Eastern Orthodox or the Roman Catholics. Later, the Count of Palestine, Olympus, confronted Elias with the choice of signing the Monophysite formula or be deposed. Elias refused to sign, was deposed, and then exiled in 516 to Aila, near the south of Jordan, or Aqaba, on the Red Sea. He died in exile 2 years later. So with that, I'll end today's video, and the next time I'll continue with the next Bishop of Jerusalem. I'll either try to tell a story or show some visuals, whichever seems more interesting. Thanks for watching my site, and as a reminder, please visit my website, atlasbible.com. Under the directory, you can find useful visual and literary information hyperlinked to nourish your understanding of the East or of Christianity that was